a lot of times as worship leaders, and really anybody who's in a platform, a big social media account, or someone who's a leader in some place, like it's really easy to wrap up some identity in that thing. But reality is, like, it's such a small little sliver of who you are and what you are doing here on this earth. Like, what are you doing in the day-to-day, in the mundane?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Church Circle podcast, and we are flying through season 3, and there's so many different topics we've been talking about this season. And one of the ones I really wanted to hit this season was not just worship, but there's the songwriting, music production side of things. And there's one person that I know that's a kind of a man of many talents. He not only is a worship leader, a songwriter, a musician, a family man, you name it, he is that. But he's also just won the award for the coolest podcast background of the day. It's Corbin Phillips, who's over in California right now. Corbin, how are you? And thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great, dude. Thank you for having me. I'm actually in Winthrop, Washington right now. It's like way up near the border of Canada.
Oh, you're up there.
I'm way up here. So, but yes, I don't always have this scenic background in my daily life, but I'm very thankful to be here.
Well, I think where you are is quite fitting for our conversation today, but
yes.
maybe you can kind of explain that as kind of as well as explaining kind of who you are for maybe those who don't know, and a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So, obviously my name's Corbin. I am from Sacramento, California, that area. I'm married. I have a beautiful wife named Lori. We've been married for almost 8 years now. And we've got 3 little girls, which is incredible. I've got a 5-year-old and then almost 3-year-old twins now, which has been absolute chaos, but the best thing that's ever happened. So I love my kids. I love my wife. It's just nice to have a good home base in life. I've been at my church, which is Bayside, since I was 8 years old, which I'm learning is not a common thing to kind of grow up at a church and be there for your whole life. But I'm so thankful. I love our church. I've seen every season of it. And I'm just glad I get to be there. And so, man, I've been leading worship there really since I was a teenager, but in the staff capacity since 2011. We started a band probably 8-9 years ago called Thrive Worship, and just been writing songs for our church. And that's what I'm actually up here doing this week. It's a church camp for churches all over the country that I'm really thankful to be a part of. So we're just writing songs for church, man.
I mean, and I love that you have the homegrown element, because I think that gives you a different insight to the operations and the lifespan of a church and all of its quirks and features. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and just kind of chat a little bit more about what makes you tick and the behind the scenes of all of that side of things. I think we often see worship from the platform, right? Like we're in the crowd and we see you guys on stage, and there's a polished and excellent performance, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, especially when you bring your own music that you've written and spent time developing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. So maybe we just kind of start with the worship leader side of things, as that's something you've been doing longer than songwriting. What do you think makes a great worship leader in 2025?
Wow, that's a great question. Man, it's probably multifaceted, right? I think where I'll start with that, though, is, like being great dads and moms and friends and people who are willing to, have the secret place outside of ministry. All of those things serve as a foundation to do something on the platform. And so I think, as far as like practically what makes a great worship leader is somebody who's just connected to the Spirit, somebody who's willing to put in the time behind the scenes. I heard it said to me one time, I thought this was so fascinating. I was asking a similar question to somebody I looked up to, like what makes a great worship leader? And they said, well, 2% of my time is spent leading worship. I'm like, oh, but that's a really good perspective to have, is like, this is actually such a small little facet of life. And I think a lot of times as worship leaders, and really anybody who's in a platform, it can even be a big social media account or someone who's a leader in some place, like it's really easy to wrap up some identity in that thing. But reality is, like, it's such a small little sliver of who you are and what you are doing here on this earth. And so, man, I think that's why I go back to like the foundational piece. Like, what are you doing in the day-to-day, in the mundane, that is like kind of serving that role as being pastoral and loving on people. It's not a place for perfect people. Nobody's on this earth is perfect, but it's kind of going like, how are you finding ways to live in the integrity side outside of the platform? And so I think that's what makes a great worship leader, someone who's just honest, authentic, and leading from a place that they've been before.
Yeah, because I guess the people that you work with, the people that you build team with and do ministry with, they're going to see you way more off the platform than they are when you're on the platform, right?
100%.
And so what you do off the platform is almost more important than what you do on the platform. I mean, obviously you're leading people in the spirit when it's on stage, but then you're also leading people in their lives as a team lead, right? And
Absolutely.
so if you fail in your leadership, then you not only, it's not only affected on a Sunday morning, but it's affected in the lives of your team throughout the day to day. So
true.
Yeah, it's funny. We've been talking with creative directors and other people who are in positions of leadership, and they all say the same thing. Like, they get to the leadership level, where it's director level or leader level, and they sort of had this moment where they're like, "Oh, the thing that this looks like I do all the time is actually the thing that I do the least." What are some core values for you? Like, we kind of zoom in a little bit on that. What are the core values or non-negotiables for you? What are you trying to instill into your worship team?
Yeah, well, we've been using this phrase for, I don't know, last few years. It's adapted over the years too, but it's kind of just based from this passage in Matthew talking about how Christ came to serve and not to be served. And I think it's really important to have that as kind of your banner for what you're doing in ministry specifically. Well, life, but I think definitely in ministry. And so we've kind of adopted this umbrella that we live under, is that we're just really all servants of Christ, of the ministry, of the kingdom. And underneath that, we've had these little phrases we've been using, that as servants, we should be God honoring, we should be people centric, and we should be solution oriented. That's a whole other breakdown. I can go through it sometime, but really broad strokes is like, what about your life, is showing God, like we said before, in every aspect, every facet of your life. How are you just like being someone who's just good with being around people? Like, Jesus served people, right? He was around, he retreated and he prayed and all that, but he had times where he was going and doing ministry just where people weren't doing it, right? He was going and I think about the woman at the well, right? He was just going and he saw a moment where her life needed to be spoken into, and he didn't shy away from it. He went into it. And then solution oriented. It's like, too often we go like, throw our hands up, like that's too hard, or there's no way of getting out of that. But man, like there's always a way, and especially with God, man, like there's always a way through things. And so just trying to take those three things and operate in ministry. Those are some key things. One thing that comes to my mind too in talking about that is a big core value for us is being feedback seekers. There's three levels of feedback. You can be resistant to feedback, you can be open to feedback, but where we like people to live is in that seeking feedback, going after and asking the questions. Like, and I think it's important the way you ask those questions. Like, I think it's really dangerous when you start asking questions from stage, like, how am I doing? Or what would you change about that? It's more, is this impacting people, right? Like, is this something that is, are you seeing the hand of God in what we're doing right now? And so, yeah, I think it's really important for us to just be willing to check our agendas at the door and just be good feedback seekers.
I think that's good for any like part of ministry or any just part of life, really, isn't it? Just to be wanting to improve yourself and be more like Christ. It's obviously quite a high pressure environment, and you've got to have, especially when you're leading, and it's almost like you're the person on the platform longer than anyone else. Like, the pastor may have like 10 more minutes on a Sunday, maybe, but then if you think about like the times you're up, if there's like offering stuff or if there's an end song, like you're going to be up there for a significant chunk of time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders, one, to make sure that service runs smoothly, but also people are looking to you as someone who is spiritually in tune, right? Like is connected with God, looped in. So how do you personally stay spiritually fresh? How do you deal with that pressure? And you're not just kind of on for that Sunday,
I'm reminded of this quote from this tennis player named Billie Jean King. She was kind of a famous tennis player back in the day, but she also captained the American team. I want to say in the 90s, maybe the 80s. I can't remember. No, it was later than that. Anyways, there was one in particular famous quote that she had. She was talking with Lindsay Davenport, and Lindsay was going up against the Spanish number one at that time, and she had never beat her. and she's kind of freaking out. And she walked up to Billie Jean King, who was captaining at the time, and she just goes like, "Say something to me." And just without thinking, Billie Jean King responds and goes, "Pressure is a privilege, and champions adjust." And it's just so fascinating. It like really like struck me when I read this story. Because if you think about it, if you're in a pressure situation, that means you're doing something great, right? Like, so in our particular setting or our context, pressure is something that it means that God's called you to something and He's asking you to step up, right? And I look at the examples in Scripture, and I look at all the people that He called, and none of these dudes are qualified, right? Like none of these people are qualified. But he doesn't call the equipped; he equips the called, right? And so he brings them into these situations, and I think that right there is something really to hone in on. Is that you can't do this job, you cannot do ministry in your own strength. It has to be something that is fully reliant, fully dependent on the Spirit to lead, fully dependent on you taking your own time to get with the Spirit, to get with the Lord, to get in Scripture. I think it's really, really important to find the secret place as often as you can. When I say the secret place, it's scripturally speaking in the Psalms, David talks about this secret place he goes to. That's is a place where he is just fully attuned to the Spirit of God, and then he's in the presence of God, and it's removed. It's a private conversation, right? And so I think it's really important to find that space because you can't take anybody on a platform that you haven't been yourself. And so, I think that's the way to kind of I guess combat's the wrong word, but to handle the pressure is realizing that you're not going to be able to, and you have to be able to be reliant on something that's much more powerful than you.
Yeah, and ultimately that comes down to humility, right? You have to understand that it's not in your own strength, which I guess I imagine being in your field, you've met a lot. I guess worship and musicians, there's a lot of people that struggle with ego because of the skill, the visible skill that's involved. And so I'm sure you've seen firsthand people who have been doing, and you can almost tell instantly, like, okay, you're doing that in your own strength. And it's like, and it's kind of, you have to really hold yourself back. I mean, it's the same for me. And if I make even as something as simple as a design, and I haven't like invited God into that, it won't work as well. It just doesn't, I don't think as clearly. What the end product isn't as good. And it's like, I feel like in every way of life, we can invite God into the small things, and he'll make those things 10 times better than anything we could do on our own. But it's having the humility to recognize that in the first place. And we'll talk about the pressure a little bit more and how that impacts you and your family, maybe towards the end. Because I want to talk about, you mentioned you have 3 girls. And then you've got twins, and they've just come out of their teachable twos.
Yes.
So I think there's probably a lot we can talk about there. But like I said, I know I like music, but I don't know the ins of production of music, the in-depthness of it. So let's just twist kind of onto songwriting for a second.
Cool.
This is something obviously you've been doing you said you've been heading or being part of Thrive for what, 8 years now? That's how long?
Yeah, something like 8 to 10 years, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, and so I've worked with you guys before, and obviously I've been to live recordings before and heard you listen to your music, and you guys produce some really great stuff.
Thanks, man.
And what I want to know is kind of the behind the scenes stuff. So what is it like? Firstly, this isn't really a question on here, but what is it like for you and what is kind of your role within Thrive, and how does the songwriting play an impact, and how does leading, like, are you guys spending most of your time songwriting? Are you guys spending most of your time rehearsing? Or is it kind of like a split of all those things and then recording in that as well? Like, what does it look like to be part of Thrive?
Yeah, well, it's funny, man. Like, Thrive is such like an overflow of what happens at the church and in our worship culture. And so it is funny you say, like, you mentioned a few different things. Like, there really is a balance that happens, like a juggling act that happens, because some moments we're like looking at Planning Center and go like, oh man, we need a bass player for this weekend. And then other moments we're like, man, we really need to write the next song for the church to sing. And so, I think if I go, kind of zoom into the songwriting piece of it for a second, we try to create like a little rhythm within the team to have a Thursday morning session set aside that as often as we can, we try to keep on the calendar to just get together and to write. And then, a lot of us, I think of myself and Taylor Gall, we write a lot. I'm up here writing all week long. I'll probably come away with 6 to 8 songs. So there's a lot of rhythms in place to be writing a lot. And as songwriters too, I think a lot of people resonate with this, but like, you're kind of always like observing and looking for ideas. And I've got a pocket full of ideas on my voice memo app that in the moment I know that if I don't capture those, then I won't have those to draw upon later. And so I think it's a little bit of an interesting thing. I've also heard it said that songwriting is a muscle. Just like you'd go to the gym and you're trying to get your biceps bigger and you keep lifting and lifting and lifting. It's the same way with songwriting. So it's like the more we do it, the more it becomes a consistent rhythm. The better it gets, the more consistent we get. And I think it's kind of been something that we thought was important to instill is like at least a weekly rhythm for Thrive. You asked my role there. I do a little bit of everything. I've kind of I say like that we have some torch carriers in Thrive. That's kind of the phrase I use. So I've been carrying the torch for Thrive over the last season, and that everything from meeting with management to the label to songwriting to executive producing the projects, talking about how we want to do the video, the live recordings, all that. And so my day-to-day with Thrive is quite involved for sure.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's great. And that's the thing is there's so much, for the average, person attending church, they probably don't even know 30% of what goes into making songs and writing songs and production of songs and everything. So from songwriting to, singing on stage, there is probably 30 to 40 different steps to get there, right?
Yes.
And they probably assume it's like we write the song, we record the song, and then we perform the song. And it's like, no, there's like a lot more in depth there. But I think it's really important. Like I've heard recently that a lot of theology and how churches actually get their church to understand, theological things, whether it's, how, when we're looking at the Trinity or whether you're looking at the role the Holy Spirit plays or all that kind of stuff. A lot of people use songwriting to explain those things, especially if they're teaching their church something that they believe themselves. So what role for you and for Bayside does songwriting play in like shaping the identity and the theology of the church?
Dude, I think it's massive. Here's why. I think I studied in Germany for a year, did a Bible school out there. And I remember as part of that program, they put together worship teams and we went around to different communities all throughout Europe. And specifically, I remember we did like a little like worship and church service in an elementary school. And I think it was like 4th grade or 5th grade that we're all in there. And I noticed that 90% of what they were doing, what they were learning, the content was musical. And I asked them questions like, hey, why they're singing the whole time? That's really cool. Like, why are they doing that? And they said, well, it's like proven through a bunch of studies that the best way to memorize things is actually through song. And so if you think about it, that's really exciting. And also a little bit there's a weight that carries when it's in the context of church, because now you're singing things that are going to literally form people's theology because they're so memorable, right? And you think about all the hymns that we've sung for hundreds of years. I even go back to like Bach. Like Bach was writing songs on Sunday morning to like teach people about the scripture, and I think it's really fascinating. So it's a thing that we are very cognizant of as we're writing songs, and we have a lot of things in place to check theology to make sure it's in alignment with the Bible, alignment with what the church is doing. And so, but as far as like the weight of it, man, I think it's so important because someone may come to a sermon and check out for 80% of it, but they may remember the song you sang that talked about, like you said, the Trinity, or it talked about the Holy Spirit, or it talked about the King returning, or whatever it is, and those things they stick in your brain because music has this power. It unlocks a part of your memory, so it's really, really important to us.
Yeah, I'd never actually thought about it from that perspective of memorizing stuff, but it makes complete sense because in schools, like you said, like young children learn through song, and so it's almost like I think sometimes I could have thought of that as a way of like not dumbing down theology, but for it to become kiddish and childlike. But actually, that makes complete sense. Like adults still, we can remember the songs that are on the radio, and so of course we're going to remember the songs that are in church. And if those songs are theologically incorrect, what we're declaring on a day-to-day basis is something that's not biblically accurate. So it's huge. Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought about that before. Are you ready to take your church leadership to the next level? Then it's time to join Church Circle, a vibrant community where church leaders, staff, and creatives come together to share ideas, tackle challenges, and grow in their ministries. Say goodbye to getting lost in the noise of endless social media groups, and hello to a space where your voice is valued and your struggles are met with unwavering support and inspiration. Church Circle is more than just another online community. It's a place where you can connect with like-minded individuals who truly understand the unique challenges of church leadership. Ready to experience the difference? Head to churchcircle.com and sign up today. What advice would you give to churches, worship leaders, worship teams who want to start writing some original music, but they're not really sure where to start? Maybe like, how did you get started?
Dude, that's such a good question. And it's a great question to ask yourself too. Like, and the way I would ask it is like, do I have something to say? Right. I think for us, when we first started, a lot of the songs were coming from stories that we were hearing from our congregation or even people on our team. I think of one example in particular. We wrote a song called Everything. It was kind of the first song that went out into the wild for Thrive. And the whole thing started on, we were actually on our way to a songwriting retreat and got a phone call from a volunteer and picked it up, and on the speaker, obviously it came over the car speaker, and we're like, hello. And he didn't answer. He was just sitting there. You could tell he was on the line, but he didn't say anything. And it stayed that way for about 30 seconds. And finally, he started kind of unpacking what was going on. And there was just something really traumatic that was going on in his life at the time. And, we did our best in the moment to just pastor, console, just sit there, listen. But something stuck out in the conversation. And the comment that was made was like, man, I feel like all I have right now is Jesus. Like all I can rely on is Jesus right now. So we hung up the phone call and started, finished the drive. But it was kind of silent for the next 30 minutes in the car because we were just thinking about like just that moment. So we got to the Airbnb that night, and I was like, man, we got to write this song right now. And it went from this moment of like, man, this is so hard that he's walking through this, but like also there's probably a lot of other people walking through this right now. Like we should be mindful of this and take a moment to articulate like maybe something that would be helpful for somebody walking through that. And so we just started saying things like, everything we need is in Jesus, right? And it's so simple, but it all was predicated on us being attuned to what was happening in somebody that was just in our church, in our community, right? And so I think for somebody who's starting to write songs and maybe asking the question, like, how do I do that? If it's meant to be, if God's going to elevate those songs outside of your church, the conversations with label are going to come, the production stuff's going to come, all of the semantic sides, the organizational sides, that'll come. But what you can't synthesize is having something to say to your church. And I think that is really one really important way of doing that is just being attuned to what's going on in your church and understand the stories, understand what's happening in your community, and then write from that place.
That's really good, because I think sometimes we can make it complex, right? Like we say, like you said, like when you think about labels and you're thinking like, how am I going to copyright this music and stuff? And it's like, well, just start by writing the song first. Stop thinking about all the logistical side of things.
And that all starts with song. Yep.
Yeah. So maybe you can walk us through a little bit. You said you were that with that particular song, Everything, you were going to a retreat, and that's where the idea came into your head. What was the creative process from there? Like you started writing the song, but maybe just run us through what goes from a song being an idea to it being sung on a Sunday.
And it's so fun. Like every idea comes together differently. But I think I'll just try and talk through our process a little bit. So like I said before, I've got a pocket full of ideas always in my phone. I think it's so important to just be curating. It's like pastors, right? Like when they hear a story, they usually log it away. And sometimes you hear it in a sermon like a month later. I think it's really important for songwriters to do the same thing. So we'll have a pocket full of ideas that we'll bring into a session. Obviously then we'll spend the time writing a song. From there, man, it's like a lot of times it'll be, oh, what if we tweak this lyric even after the session, right? You're being okay with going back and opening back up the lyric, opening back up the melody. Every time we finish a song, though, we'll grab like a work tape of it, at least like a voice memo of just the whole song, top to bottom. From there, in the church context, the next thing we'll do is just start building up a demo. And a lot of times, myself and a guy named Jace Fay at our church will collaborate on that and just kind of come up with chord structure and some lead lines and some like overall like texture and like kind of sonic space for the song to live in. And we'll kind of call that our pre-production phase, where it's really where our main goal is just to create something that can, if we're going to play with like a loop like most churches do these days, we'll just have something kind of as like a foundation to, and it's usually simple. It's like a couple keys, textures, maybe some shakers and tambourine, all that kind of stuff, just to kind of lift it a little bit in the Sunday morning context. And then from there, that's the next thing we'll do is we'll stem everything out and take it to the team, introduce it on a Sunday morning. And one thing we really think is important, or at least we found to be effective for us, is we won't tell the church that we wrote the song, because a lot of times if you're in your church, your local church, people like you, and if you tell them like, "Oh, I wrote this song," they're like, "Oh, we love your song, Timmy. That's awesome." But I think it's important for us to get the real-time feedback, so we don't tell people. And if they're standing there like the Frozen Chosen, we're like, "Okay, maybe we missed it on that one."
That's interesting. That's a great tip.
Yeah. So anyways, from there, obviously we'll kind of assess like, hey, did that connect? Were people like worshiping? Was that something that was like impactful? Was it powerful? Did you see like, are you hearing testimonies from people going like, wow, that spoke to me this weekend? And if there's some tweaks that need to be made, we'll do that. And then from there, as far as like releasing a song, we'll go to plan a live recording. A lot of times for us these days, that's happening just on Sunday morning. We're just recording on the weekend. And because that's cool. It's just like, it's showing people what's happening in our church, and that's where the songs are being written for, and that's where they're living. So it's cool to do that. So we'll record those, and then we go into post-production, kind of add the bells and whistles, clean up everything, and send it off to mix and master and release it from there.
So like I said before, there really isn't just a couple of steps.
No.
You've simplified that as well, I'm sure. How many songs end up on the cutting room floor? Like, what point do you get to like your kind of like demo mix and you're like, oh, this song isn't going anywhere, we need to just scrap it? Do you ever do that? Do all songs make it through to like final production, or where do you kind of draw the line?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And gosh, there's so many different answers, but I think I'll say it this way. So the last project we did, I think there's 7 songs on it. We had a Dropbox of 90 songs that we were looking at.
Wow.
And so yeah, I mean, honestly, we at this point, we've done it a few times now, and so we're getting a little bit better at identifying something out of the songwriting session, whether or not it's going to be, one that works for our church. So that streamlines the process a little bit. But honestly, man, sometimes you just have to try things and you have to see if they fail or not.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think we'll take things as far as if we believe in the song, we'll take it as far as it needs to go. I torture myself and pretend like I am a mix engineer, and so I'll spend hours trying to like get it to sound exact. I want to hear it in its finality because it helps me like understand if it's going to be something that works. And so yeah, so if we're believing in the song, dude, we'll take it all the way and just kind of see where it's at and if it's landing.
Wow, 90-7. So what is that, like 20% of songs make it all the way through?
What's funny is the project before that, every song we wrote, and it was a short period of writing, every song we wrote ended up on the project. So it's different every time.
Yeah.
But
that's
I think
crazy.
having more songs to pull from, it just makes makes what you're releasing better. Obviously if you have like a higher sample size, like it's the cream's going to rise to the top. So
sure. Yeah, that's a really good insight. I don't know if this conversation ever really happens, like people get an insight into that. So that's cool. That's what I want to kind of finish on, I guess, is
man.
You've listed all the things you do, especially when it like running Thrive Worship as well as running, the worship team. I guess they are both Thrive Worship, but the Sunday to Sunday worship team, right? So that's a lot of capacity, a lot of stuff you have to do. You've just come out of conference season, or you're in the middle of conference season right now. Obviously, Thrive Conference is a leadership conference that happened last week, which is, I imagine, super intensive as well in terms of time. So how do you navigate all that stuff? How do you balance the Bayside stuff, the Thrive stuff, and also home life? Like, how do you navigate? And also you tour as well. You've done some touring. So how do you navigate life on tour, the travel, obviously your songwriting camp right now in Washington? Like, that's a lot of time to be away from family. How do you navigate all those things?
Dude, it's such a good question. And I think it's so important just to know that I've got it wrong a lot. Like, I think even 2 years ago, man, I was gone 210 days on the road between touring and writing and radio tours. And man, it's just a lot. It's a lot to put on your family. And so one thing that's been really great is, my wife is an all-star. She's absolutely amazing. So supportive of what I'm doing, believes that this is something God's asked me to do, and is there to support it along the way. But I think it's really important also to have those healthy conversations in those moments and go like, where is that line? That was too much. And so we cut it in half or even more, to what I'm doing over the last couple of years. And so I also think it's important to know that like in these kind of fields in ministry, we hear the word balance a lot. And I kind of have unsubscribed to that word a little bit, because I think there's a healthier word and it's rhythms. And I found myself going, when I'm on the road, I'm on the road, but when I'm home, I am home. I'm there with my girls. I'm there with my wife. And I don't always get that right, but I think it's been a really good paradigm for me to kind of look through and try to operate out of. And like I said before, like having those good, like honest conversations with my wife, like one really practical thing is we decided I'm going to do one writing trip a month. Like I was spending, 2 to 3 weeks a month going out and writing, whether that's for Thrive or other churches or artists or whatever, which is amazing. I'm so thankful for all the opportunities that have started to come my way, but it was also too much to be away from family. Like that's, if I'm not landing that, if that's not number one, man, like I'm doing it all wrong. I got it all backwards.
Yeah.
And so it's been good to just kind of set those really practical things in place. Like, okay, one writing trip a month. Let's be really intentional about the trips that Thrive takes, both for my family's sake and all the other artists' family's sake within our team, but also for the church. It's really important for us to be local church, team first. And if we're not pouring into that, man, like it's backwards. It's tail wagging the dog. And so, I definitely not always got it right, but I'm really thankful that I feel like we're getting some good, like practical things in place to go like, let's make this a win on the home front first.
Yeah, that's really good. It seems to be something I feel like the church has taken a turn in the last couple of years. They've gone, okay, we had to like really kick it into gear just after COVID to get momentum again.
Yeah.
And I think everyone was like, wow, this was too much. And now they're like starting to, and when everyone else is on the same page, then there's not really anyone you're trying to do this for, if that makes sense. Like we're doing it obviously for God and like he gets the glory, but a lot of these expectations that we set are people set, right? Like the engagements that we go to, the shows that we're going to turn up to, the writing stuff, all those things, a lot of it is like people have asked us to be there. And so you have the power to say no. And I think once now people are starting to get used to the idea that people can say no and people are going to put their families first, it becomes a little bit less like, I feel so bad saying no. It's like now the pressure's kind of reduced a little bit. So I'm glad we're moving towards that and not towards, just extra pressure. Yeah. Is there any other boundaries that you've just, I love hearing the practical steps. Is there anything else that you've done just to kind of help with those rhythms?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's maybe just harping on the rhythms piece again. Like wherever you are, be all there. Like being with my family is so important. My daughter just turned 5, and I had this amazing conversation with a guy that just like a legend of a human being, and he was explaining to me there's an age range from 5 to 12 that psychologically speaking, something happens to them during that time, or there's the upbringing is a little off. It's hard. It's almost impossible for them to recover from that season. But the same or the opposite is true if you get it right. So that 5 to 12 age range, if you do it really well, your kid's not going to recover from it. And so I've been trying to be really intentional about going like, okay, I've got this window, amazing window of time with my daughters that I really want to be intentional about pouring into them, giving them like an amazing childhood, like teaching them the scriptures. I love that. One of the things that my oldest and I do occasionally is we have like a little kid's Bible, and we'll go through there, and she's starting to like try to memorize some of the scripture. And I'm like, man, like it makes me so happy. It brings so much joy to my heart to see her like, obviously chasing after the most important thing in this life, which is a relationship with Jesus. So yeah, I think that's maybe the last thing I'd say is just going like, I'm trying to be really intentional with this window of time with my girls.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that would only improves your songwriting, right? And only improves your leadership because you're coming from that place of being full and filled with joy. And also seeing how a child and actually interacting with them, how they perceive the scriptures, right?
Yes.
And how they understand it. And you're like, okay, if they, like, Jesus asked us to have childlike faith, right? And so even then looking at it from a child's perspective, and then how that feeds into teaching through your songwriting. So yeah, I feel like even though it might feel like a step back in terms of career or whatever, it's like actually it's probably the best thing for your songwriting.
It's 5 steps forward, no doubt.
Yeah, that's cool. What final question? What's something that God has been teaching you in this current season of life and leadership?
Man, I feel like it's the same story he's always teaching me. Everyone has their thing in life, right? And for me, it's been trust. I think it's been just when I was, I want to say 19, I remember somebody had challenged me to just get in some time, get in the Word and spend some time praying and going like, see if you can get a word from God. And I'm not, always the most, oh, God has this word to speak over my life. That's not normally the way I'm bent, but I do feel very specifically that in that moment, God spoke to me, trust me with not just, life, but with specifically the things I've called you to, and that's music, songwriting, all the endeavors I go after creatively. And so it's like been a never ending cycle of me just perpetually not trusting and God continually putting me in situations to learn how to trust him more. And so this season has been nothing short of that. I've been just finding myself in moments where God's is pressing me and taking me through the process of going like, I've got so many great things ahead if you would just put your reliance and your trust in me. And I think one thing that's been really cool lately is I've found myself drawing upon the moments that I've seen God come through. In most of those moments, it at the time felt like there's no way, right? Like it's impossible for this to have this breakthrough here, or for this situation to change, or for me to go into this thing that I've been striving after. And every single time, it's a way that I didn't expect it, but it happened, right? And so I think God's just been challenging me in this last season to draw upon his faithfulness in seasons past. And also, I think it's the constant reminder of the story of David. You've got David, who spent the majority of his time in the fields, kind of singing songs that he was writing to a bunch of sheep that no one was hearing. And man, like even for anybody listening right now that just feels like they're in that season of stuck or feel like they're unseen, like, dude, that's the best season to be in. David was anointed king and then waited forever till he was actually sitting on the throne. And in that process, he killed a bear, he killed a lion, and that prepared him for when he had to kill Goliath. He was writing songs to the sheep that then became what was said in scripture that he wrote songs for 10,000s. And so I think it's just really important to just embrace those seasons. In those seasons, I heard it in this book one time said really well that David was just like Saul, but he had the season of getting Saul beat out of him so that when he took the kingdom, when he took the throne, he was able to operate as David. And so there's a level of identity that comes by being in those seasons of waiting and being in those seasons of just having to rely and trust that if God's called you to something, he's going to be faithful to it. You may not see it right away. And I find myself repeating it to myself, like, man, I may not see exactly all the things that God has spoken to me, but I'm doing my best every single moment to trust that and believe that they're on the way. And that gives me a lot of peace in the moment.
That's really good, man. I know probably for your personality type as well, someone who, you said like with your songwriting, when you're doing your demo mix, you want to make that sound as good as possible. It's like you want the end product now. I can imagine that's like hard in life when you're now like, okay, you can see the seeds, but you haven't seen the fruit yet. Yeah, it's really good. Maybe just one final encouragement to a young worship leader that's trying to find their voice, trying to understand their calling. They've been given a gifting. They want to step into ministry. What would you say to them?
Dude, I would just harp on exactly what I just said. I think there's so many times, I think, as young leaders, and I've been guilty of this a million times, that you really want to have the result, but you don't want to go through the process. And man, the process is so the best part. It's funny. We wrote a song yesterday, and I don't think this line ended up making it into the song, but the lyric was, you're in the ups and you're in the downs, but you're also mercy in the middle. And I just think like really finding ourselves, or forcing ourselves is probably a better question, to have the honest perspective of like, dude, if I'm not where I want to be yet, like God's mercy is right there with me, and like that's enough for this moment. Because honestly, dude, like there's a lot of pressure, like we talked about earlier, that comes with some of the things that I think we aspire to, and God is actually being so kind to us when He holds us back because He's preparing us. He's allowing us to walk through trials. He's allowing us to experience things that are going to actually build up strength, build up character, build up endurance for the seasons that we get into that we're actually having to draw upon those in. And so that would be my one encouragement. It's just like embrace that season of waiting.
That's great. And now you know, if you hear a song with you're in the ups, you're in the downs, and you're mercy in the middle, you know that someone listened to this podcast and ripped it from there.
100%.
So
GM.
they can copyright that.
Yeah.
Well, Corbin, thank you so much for carving out some time. I know it's like 8:43 in the morning for you right now. So thank you so much for making the time. I guess with 3 kids, you're going to be up early anyway, so it's just natural, right?
Thank you.
But thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. How can people connect with you, with what Thrive Worship is doing? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, man. Thrive_worship, I think on Instagram, or Thrive Worship on a couple of other platforms. But yeah, that's the best way to stay in contact with what we're doing. You can follow me, Corbin Phillips, on Instagram, and that's it, man.
Yeah, you produce some content as well. Don't
there,
you
bro.
got some stuff going out. It's good. Yeah, so I'm following both, so do the same. Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us, and this has been an episode of the Church Circle podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave a like or a comment on YouTube and share it with someone, or you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify as well. And we thank you so much for listening, and see you guys on another episode. Cheers.